Greetings and salutations, my friends. Welcome to another glorious day here at Memory Tango. I am Tango Hotel, and today we continue our journey with The Time to Die. Our model Starfleet officer has fallen from grace. Captain Jean-Luc Picard's reputation, that of the Enterprise, and her crew have all taken a massive blow. While it's not unheard of for the occasional captain to lose their way, it's rare that a ship's crew becomes tainted by such an action as well. Relieved of his command and found negligent in the loss of 2 Federation ships with all hands lost, the Vuxel, an Antillean ship, which by all appearances was destroyed on Captain Picard's direct order, and the USS Juno, that was lost in a retaliatory action by the Antillians in the aftermath. Both disasters were laid squarely upon Captain Picard's shoulders and saw him committed indefinitely to Starfleet Medical for psychological evaluation. Both the Enterprise and the Antillians claim the other is to blame. The Antillians claiming that they had identified the Juno and the Enterprise to be pirates impersonating Starfleeters due to the Enterprise destroying their flagship while they stood witness. A plausible enough excuse. Sensors inside the BoneYard were circumspect at best, and we all know well that pirates will do damn near anything for an edge, even impersonating Starfleet. No one in Starfleet really believed such a tale. It was hard to call it an outright lie, when it was just on this side of plausible. The captain and his crew maintained they had not destroyed the Antillian flagship, but another altogether more dangerous creature that could only be described as a mimic ship. Lieutenant Commander Data was the sole witness to this event, and while he was not remanded to the custody of Starfleet like Picard, he was ordered to submit to an examination by the Starfleet Corps of Engineers and the removal of his emotion chip. The android had activated it during what he thought would be his final moments, in which he witnessed the monster in all its glory. Unfortunately, this very fact was used to cast doubt upon his testimony. He witnessed the ship destroy the Vuxel, taking its shape and then obliterating her. From his testimony, we know it had disabled all electrical equipment, including himself aboard his own shuttle. When he awoke, he saw 2 of the Calypso, Captain Picard's yachts, nose to nose. One exploded, and the other moved off toward the approaching Vuxel, disabling it and assuming its form. Many at Starfleet Command did indeed believe Commander Data, but could not say so officially. They had come to know the android as above reproach, honest to a fault. So much so, without his emotion chip, he must be ordered to lie. And above all, had come to know that it was foolhardy at best to doubt him. Time and time again, he had proven a man of honor, integrity, justice, and wisdom, even if his difficulties with emotion did make him seem a fool on occasion. There was much to consider in regards to this mimic ship, from its nature to its threat level. It could be a being holographic in nature, to a literal shapeshifter, with many variants available. Does it shapeshift like a founder or with technology like a replicator? If it is a living being, killing it could be problematic. I do sympathize with my fellows at command who lament killing a living being, only going about its natural life. But in matters of life and death, hard choices must sometimes be made, and ensuring that the continued existence of your fellow officers and the billions of innocent civilians under your care is of the highest importance. Higher than the potential damage such a creature could cause, without at very least more investigation. Violence is a tool, more dangerous and deadly, indeed, but one that if wielded with prudence and justice, can reap maximum benefit with minimum cost. And until we know more, condemnation at this point would be unwise. Rashnar itself was as much a danger as any enemy within. Maelstrom storms, shredding vortexes, and unpredictable lightning striking any who dare enter, and without shields, would see you reduced to dust. Unlike most battle sites, this one was orbiting an unusual center of gravity, not letting the yard naturally, albeit slowly, fly apart. The aforementioned enemies, the Orions, the Andrasi, the Packleds, were pirates all. There was at least one known safe port for pirate scum, hidden within the wrecks, where a truce was being held together at gunpoint. What other kind of truce could pirates really offer? The Ontalians, for their part, were also a puzzling race, as they were supposedly there to help run security, to fight off the salvagers and the pirates, there to pick at the bones of the dead. They appeared to ignore the pirates who were just going about their business, only intercepting them when they stepped out of line. Some at this point may indulge in some commentary about them being pacifists, but no. When the battle comes to them, they do not shy away. When the Andrasi attacked the Juno, nearly destroying her, they mercilessly hunted down the pirates responsible, even drawing the ire of Captain Picard by destroying a ship that was on the verge of surrendering. Maybe. Reports of very erratic behavior, which the Ontalians, for their part, denied, as there were no records of such events on sensor logs, and only the words of a few Starfleeters who, by the Ontalians' reasoning, were suffering from some kind of space madness for being exposed to the horrors of the BoneYard. That was in their official statement. The true nature of this behavior had a more mundane, if not enigmatic, explanation. Before any satisfactory answers could be discovered, the situation spiraled out of control. It got so bad, so fast, the Council had to scramble, for a gigantic quadrant-spanning bureaucracy anyway, to ensure the Ontalians did not withdraw from the Federation as a reaction to the tragedy. The diplomatic corps secured a verbal proclamation of no immediate departure, but a pledge to stay? No luck so far. They were being obstinate, angry that the Enterprise had stuck its nose so deep into the BoneYard, with little regard for the dangers it represented. The diplomats from the Corps, a Tellarite and Vulcan pair, tried to explain that being mad at the humans for being human was not a wise course of action. That curiosity and solving mysteries was as part of their nature as swinging from trees was to the Ontalians. But the reclusive, sloth-like race were having none of it, almost as if they knew they were asking too much, intentionally. But what of Captain Picard and his crew? The Admiralty, for all their faults, were no fools, and neither are those who rule the Federation. The leadership on the Council could feel something was off about the whole mess. On its face, the Federation and Starfleet had to distance itself from the flagship, if not outright condemn them for negligence. The usual political machinations kept the Admiralty and Council from supporting the captain publicly. They assigned a Counselor Kabat to be the captain's warden. Odd that a young and up-and-comer would be the custodian of such a valuable charge. Admiral Nakamura himself made this arrangement possible and positioned himself to take advantage of all the possible outcomes. It's not nearly as nefarious as it seems. The Mimic ship was a potent weapon, and would be a boon not only to the Federation and Starfleet, but also to the career of anyone who should be able to capture and study it. It appears, no matter how far we come as humans, we are still human. And it's not even as if Nakamura is a bad actor. Disabling a ship and rendering its crew combat ineffective, leaving both unharmed, would be a dream weapon for the Federation, who are always looking to maximize effectiveness while using the least amount of violence possible. The ability to clone an enemy ship, both to deceive that enemy and to exploit normally unseen weaknesses, would be a weapon of unbelievable power and mercy. It's easy to see why the Admiral would covet such a thing. A weapon that would ensure peace throughout the Federation space for centuries to come. An invigorating thought if there ever was one. While the politicians played their games of saving face, there was movement behind the scenes. The Federation, Starfleet specifically, was all but kicked out of Ontalian space, and the Ontalians were now members in name only. The Ontalians had a sympathetic story, and being non-humans, had the angle of being singled out for some type of bigotry, mayhaps. Even the smell of such a thing could cause other non-humanoid member worlds to sour their relations, and potentially lead to breaking relations with the Federation. Behind all the smiles and assurances of unity, the Council feared a mass exodus of recent members, many of whom only joined for protection against the Dominion, which now stands defeated. While it is a lot of maybes and ifs, this is the bread and butter of the politicals. As disdainful as we may feel toward them, many, including the ambassador to Vulcan, have proven their sense keen to which way the political winds blow. Considering that, it would be unwise to ignore these signs and portents of doom. Through these machinations, the Enterprise would be given a chance to find and destroy or capture whatever was responsible for the tragedy at Rashanar, as it was now called. There would be no official record of this deployment. If captured or destroyed, Starfleet and the Council would disavow them as renegades, and even if they succeeded, what truly happened at Rashanar could never come to light. The alliance the Federation represented was more important than any other consideration. More so than the reputation of its flagship, her captain, her crew, and the truth. Captain Picard would be allowed to return to the Enterprise, not as her captain, but as a crewman, under the supervision of Counselor Kabatz. The first officer, now acting Captain William Riker, would be the shipmaster of this clandestine voyage. Most of the staff were on shore leave, so it would be a skeleton crew, just enough to get her out into the void. The plan was fairly simple. The Enterprise would return to Rashanar and act as a base of operations while they used a smaller ship to find the demon and subdue or kill the entity, all while avoiding the Ontalians, the pirates, and of course death at every turn. They requisitioned a belt scow, an asteroid miner from the Sol system, and rigged it up as a makeshift pirate vessel. It had no weaponry and was slow, perfect for the slow-moving, clunky nature of the site. Between spotty sensors and random energy discharges, energy weapons could be as disastrous for the user as much as the target. But since they were going to be masquerading as pirates, they could at least act like it, by strapping a torpedo launcher onto the bottom of the old girl, with a few more in storage for reload. You know, for luck. Meanwhile, the Federation's erstwhile ally would now be on the opposing side of the Enterprise and its mission. An enigmatic people, and if one were to look hard enough into their history, perhaps, you might find something intriguing or disturbing. I guess it depends on your perspective. The Ontalians were more than mere creatures who lived in balance with their environment. So strong is this belief that they would sacrifice members of their population to hungry wildlife. Willingly, they would throw themselves headlong into the hooves and claws of predators if their need was great enough. Balance isn't a strong enough word. Even species who align ideologically will, in most cases, put themselves above non-sapient life forms. But not the Ontalians. How far would they go to placate such predators? If the danger were great enough, would they sacrifice whole ships to this end? All while lying and deceiving their allies? When the Ontalians were first venturing into space some 500 years ago, they encountered a creature not far from their home system. Its name roughly translates into Demon Flyer. Federation anthropologists compare it to the Flying Dutchman of Earth, a ghost ship prowling the darkness in search of the damned. Treated now as nothing more than a legend by the by, that is said to have no soul. Whether real or not, the actions of the Ontalians show they view something in the Yard as a threat. Since the expulsion of the Enterprise, their fleet has been spread thin. The main gateways are now locked down, but the pirates seem to move freely, more so now that Starfleet has no official presence. Their deployment pattern, scattered around the outside of the gates, would indicate the pirates are not their main concern. No, they were deployed perfectly for keeping something inside the boneyard. An advantageous situation for the newly arrived pirates. Inserting their slow and ponderous salvaging scow would be the hard part, but hopefully, once inside, the Antalians wouldn't be much of a threat. With Picard as the shipmaster of the little pirate scow, named the Skeggy, he would still need a crew. With only enough space for 4 and a skeleton crew on the Enterprise, it would be slim pickings at best. First was the captain's keeper, Counselor Kabat, who insisted on going, of course. Senior Tactical Officer Christine Vale, for obvious reasons. And to round out the crew, Ensign Brewster, another non-Enterprise crew member who was assigned by Admiral Nechayev as her liaison to Starfleet Command. Brewster had been extremely useful during the captain's trial, helping the Admiral liaison with the Medusan prosecutor. But we now know the unremarkable ensign is not all that he appears to be. He is in fact a traveler, and a former Starfleet cadet / officer known as Wesley Crusher, son of Beverly Crusher, the chief medical officer of the USS Enterprise. It does boggle the mind how often Starfleet Command learns of godlike beings assisting its personnel. Luckily, in this case, the godling was a former human, a Starfleet officer trained by some of the most decorated officers Starfleet has ever seen. A man who had earned their trust wholeheartedly. The fact that our very civilization seems to rely on the beneficence of such beings is not an easy one to live with. But it is at the very least something we should document. It is entirely possible without his interference the entire mission might not have happened, or could have allowed Picard and his crew to be sacrificed on the altar of political convenience. Events of this nature are always highly classified, of course. They are always unpredictable and invariably dangerous. If the citizens of the Federation were to gain such knowledge, it could cause mass panic or even war. We need not forget the turmoil a few changeling caused to Earth during the Dominion War, and the fear their very presence created. I shall try to keep the fantastical to a minimum, as most of the reports from Picard and his crew do only hint at the true nature of the Traveler's aid. Mr. Crusher, who was at this time still hiding his identity from most of the crew, has the ability to bend reality around himself. An at-will effect that causes almost all sapient beings to immediately forget his face and appearance. This allowed him to assume the identity of a person who did not exist, and no one would question. Even the androids and computers were fooled. It allowed him to persuade Starfleet Command, from the Medusan lawyer who prosecuted Picard to Admiral Nakamura, who first wanted to throw Picard to the wolves, of the good captain's innocence. They all came to believe that something was odd at Rashanar, and every one of them believed it was their own idea. How novel. Even more so that Crusher admits he did this. While the others danced around the issue, to shield the young man, no doubt, he did no such thing. Dealing with pirates and scoundrels wasn't easy, but neither was getting a ship as large as the Enterprise inside the yard without the Antalians noticing. To their unmitigated shock, the Antalians didn't seem to give a damn about the pirates, only keeping up the pretense if they dared near the sleek vessels. They apparently had other objectives. Luck was not on the Skeggy side, however. Shortly after entering the Boneyard, they were waylaid by heavily armed Orion pirates, immediately capturing 3 of the crew, Picard, Vale, and Cabot. The crew, now slaves, and their pirate masters absconded immediately with their new haul in tow to the nearest pirate haven, a bar, in fact, because of course. What better activity for a pirate than to drink to your success after a day of scavenging, pillaging, and salvaging? It was hidden in the underbelly of a Dominion dreadnought, the gigantic warship now in orbit around the center of the yard, perfectly obscured by debris, protected by a force field, and manned turrets. Apparently, the pirates don't trust one another. Only 3 of them were captured, as the Traveler vanished the moment the Orion pirates boarded, whisking himself away off to find their allies aboard the Enterprise, the giant vessel doing its best to play dead amongst the debris. It was a fairly dire start, as these things go, but at least they were in contact with pirates of the BoneYard and knew the location of one of their safer ports. Another factor in their favor was Counselor Kabatz. By the time they arrived aboard the Dreadnought, she had one of the Orions practically smitten with her. Seducing a 7-foot-tall wall of meat to be your personal bodyguard should allow her to have more respect among the piratical scum. Who's going to argue that his new girlfriend is not a fellow pirate? No one with any sense of survival instinct. It's not like it would be a huge loss. They had 2 more slaves. Humans, though, especially old or ugly ones, don't sell very well on the slave markets. The ship, its complement of torpedoes, and a girlfriend for a lonely crewmate was a lot of plunder for these boys, and was to be considered a very good day. Of course, Mr. Crusher, using his godlike powers to bend and warp space and time, would eventually effectuate their escape. Once back aboard the Skeggy, they all agreed a parting gift was in order for their former captors and fellow pirates. A gift they would not forget. A photon torpedo, aimed right at one of those nifty defense turrets. It would ensure their flight would be covered and leave the pirates wary of another fight. With that, the Starfleeters cemented their position as serious and ruthless players in the BoneYard. It would also inspire vengeance among their prior associates. Of course, it would draw the attention of the other factions who were wary of the danger, yet curious of the potential profits. Even the other pirates would admit that the Orions got exactly what they deserved. Enslaving your competition is, of course, a natural thing of pirates, but so is vengeance. While the Skeggy was off gallivanting about and having all the fun, a bit of that fun decided to meander over to the Enterprise, who was still playing dead in the debris field. Data was outside the ship, altering the markings to make them look like pirates pretending to be Starfleet. War crimes notwithstanding, it's a smart move to prevent the pirates pretending to be a Starfleet vessel. With little warning, the Antalians emerged from warp, teleporting aboard assault teams. While the Antalians are not much to look at physically, they are quick and are able to wrap around a humanoid's whole limb within the blink of an eye. Riker's quick thinking saved the day. He ordered the computer to increase the gravity all across the ship. This would hobble most humans. Even Riker had to struggle. But for the Antalians, it was utterly overwhelming. Crushing weight that not even their specialized training could overcome. Training for 1G had given them a hell of a fighting chance against the skeleton crew, but now that they were trapped by their own weight, with Data aboard the Enterprise, they were able to make their escape. Soon after their miraculous escape, the crew of the Skeggy would be approached by an Andrasi vessel, with an overseer by the name of Jacer. He wanted them to pose as Starfleeters, to pay a ransom for an Andrasi who was being held hostage by Packleds for being unable to pay off his gambling debts. Fristrin, he was called, apparently some sort of genius, and more importantly, he had discovered an antimatter cache in the yard. Perhaps the demon ships. These Packleds refused to deal with the Andrasi. They were competitors after all, but they would deal with Starfleet, as they were considered a non-threat, especially now, after the incident with the Juno. Not usually considered the brightest of individuals, they have been known for taking advantage of this stereotype for tactical purposes. It would be unwise to underestimate them in such negotiations. Their stupidity does not make them harmless. Luckily for Picard, he has an ace up his sleeve. A godling. Overseer Jacer would be supplying them with the Latinum and a Starfleet shuttle. The deception would be complete. In return, Captain Picard would receive a Romulan cloaking device, and Jacer, being the ever-generous type, would pay with that up front. The Andrasi's reputation was known throughout the Alpha and Beta quadrants for their illicit deals and their tendency to be far more armed than they appeared. Enough on occasion to compete with mid-sized Starfleet vessels. The curious thing about travelers is that they can also sustain themselves in the vacuum of space. No ship, no suit. This allowed Crusher unprecedented freedom, the ability to find the demon ship and the Pakleds with their hostage. Doing what humans do best, he stuck his nose where it didn't belong. Attracting the attention of the Pakleds and the demon wasn't the brightest of ideas. The damnable thing nearly got him, able to move close enough to affect his traveler's senses, while his nose was distracting him. Now the second person to witness its transformation and live, he witnessed the destruction of the Pakled vessel, with all souls aboard except one. He had found Fristrin. Driven near mad from torture, they escaped the fated Pakled ship, and Fristrin was deposited on the Enterprise for treatment and safekeeping. The Andrasi was the victim of severe mistreatment and appeared to have lost his mind. How would Captain Picard explain this turn of events to his new Andrasi allies? Overseer Jacer didn't seem overly concerned nor surprised when told about his competitor's demise. His given reason: it's what most non-aligned species think of humans, that we, Terrans, are the most devious species to have ever graced the galaxy. Picard didn't prove him wrong, as he shifted to playing the part of Ahab hunting a demon whale. They made a new deal: help Picard slay the demon ship, and the Skeggy would be at Jacer's beck and call. A deal too good for the pirate to turn down. Another ship to add to his retinue would be a boon on a good day, but 4 capable and devious humans, proven under fire, with not but a tugboat and a cloaking device? How could he say no? But it was too good to be true. Kabat, clever as ever, swooped in and volunteered to be a liaison and hostage. It was sufficient to push aside Jacer's skepticism and ensure him of the Skeggy's commitment to this new pact. Truly, the counselor had earned her place on this ragtag crew, wooing the stupid Orion, distracting an entire bar of pirates with nothing but a smile, now turning her training and that charm upon the Overseer, goading him into taking her as a hostage. She was betting he could be more easily manipulated around his subordinates, if done with enough tact and grace. A bet she won. Tracking the beast to the center of Rashanar, both ships poised to strike. The demon, in a half-deformed state of its last victim, the Pakleds, was frozen in place, a tendril of blackness extending into the anomaly at the center of the BoneYard. This was the source of the gravitational force keeping the BoneYard together. It will eventually and inevitably shred the whole of the BoneYard, as everything falls into its gravitational shear, shredded to metallic dust. The demon wasn't moving, not even undulating in the way that it was reported when it changed shape. Speculation from the reports suggests that the creature was depositing antimatter that it collected from the site. More theories than answers at whether this could be its entire purpose. Was it from this dimension or universe? Perhaps an antimatter universe. The anomaly may have been here for far longer than previously thought, since before the Ontalians had spaceflight even. One thing was clear. The creature disabled its prey to inspect it, then shapeshifted to understand its prey. So it knew exactly where the antimatter would be stored. What better way to gain insight into a starship than to replicate it? The exploding victim appears to be a secondary effect. Disabling complex technology like starships is dangerous on a good day. If you're seeking to remove the ship's entire antimatter supply directly from the source, you can see why it often ends in catastrophe. What followed was one hell of a boom, and the flare was as bright as a star for a few brief moments. As it died, so did the gravity that was holding Rashanar together. Unfortunately for us all, the demon did not die with it. It went straight for Jacer's ship, following the path of the torpedo he launched. Would Overseer Jacer have fired if not for Colleen Cabot, poking him ever so slightly in front of his lessers? The pirate ship exploded as the creature approached. Just before that explosion, a traveler appeared inside the Overseer's ship, grabbing and pulling Colleen into open space, just in the nick of time. Flying through the void, they appeared inside the Skeggy. Instead of Picard and Vale, they found an empty tug with only the curtain they hung for privacy. Several plasma bolts ripped through that curtain. 2 blasters aimed at him from behind that curtain missed, but one hit Colleen directly in the midsection. She died staring at Wesley, holding his face as her body slumped to the deck. The next few seconds consisted of the Traveler killing all but one of the Orions, in horrific yet understandable rage. The Orions had decided that Wesley had to die for what happened at the bar, and had boarded the Skeggy while everyone was distracted. They had set an ambush for the Godling, and that had cost him Colleen. It was all Picard could do to get through to the young man, so he did not kill the last one, as he was the only one who could unlock their new ship. Picard and his merry band were now the proud new owners of an Orion pirate ship and one Orion slave. Now the BoneYard was free from its anomalous gravitational master, the Ontalians sent out hails to both the Enterprise and their newly acquired pirate ship that the demon was now free from the BoneYard. No longer bound to Rashanar, they feared it would escape and wreak havoc. They demanded their cooperation and enforced it with the threat of extreme violence. The Ontalians solidified that threat when the imprisoned Ontalians in the brig were freed from their confinement, and this time they took control of the gravity systems. Lowering the gravity, they were easily able to take the bridge and the crew hostage. Even Data could not stop them from using the lives of his crewmates as leverage to make him obey. Fristrin was at their lead, ordering them to do as they were told. Working as an Ontalian agent among the pirates, he had freed the imprisoned Ontalians and was now turning this ship into the most tempting target for the demon. Since the Enterprise and her crew were spies and renegades, who in the Federation would protest the Ontalian account of the Enterprise being destroyed resisting arrest after returning to the scene of their disgrace? Soon, the Enterprise would be in position to send out a distress call and summon the demon. The plan was easy: to self-destruct the Enterprise and hope the Enterprise's final battle would take the demon with it. Pure desperation. Often, becoming a thing, you inherit the weaknesses of the thing. The Ontalians were throwing a bomb at the creature. Wesley would make the demon into a bomb. By turning itself into a Starfleet vessel while its self-destruct is active, it should have its own self-destruct countdown. The Traveler would base everything on that assumption. Getting aboard was a feat only a being like a Traveler would be able to accomplish. By focusing the collective thought of the Travelers, he was able to resist the attack that made most sapients pass out and later perish. The rest of the Travelers were still with him. He thought they would abandon him long ago due to his interference. He was too slow to save Colleen, but he would be able to resist the all-encompassing terror of this creature. He had to get aboard to ensure the self-destruct was still active. It was counting down. It was all the man could do to keep conscious through the ordeal, and almost lost himself narrowly making his escape. It was a spectacular explosion, and a fulfillment of the prophecy, hard quotes, that Wesley reported to have witnessed in his training as a Traveler. I often lament the entanglement of Starfleet officers with godling creatures, but at least with Mr. Crusher, he files his reports, even if they are rather vague on occasion. I have no doubt the Traveler will come across my desk once more. We humans are the curious sort, stubborn to a fault. And so ends the threat of the great demon flyer. Thwarted though it may be, the Enterprise would not be able to collect plaudits this time. The deal was secrecy, and secret it will stay. The Ontalians would save face and remain within the Federation alliance untarnished and with no questions to be asked by the general public. The skeleton crew, the Admiralty, and no one else would know the true extent of this mission and fault of all parties involved. The Enterprise and her crew would have to bear the scars of this tragedy. They were still the flagship, still the same crew, but a bit of the legend, the aura, that best of the best shine the Enterprise exudes, would be a little less bright. Soon after, more people would request transfers than normal. The list of people eager to join the crew would be just a bit shorter. It wouldn't be long, however, until they would be given the chance to start rebuilding, one mission at a time. Well, that'll have to wait until the next time. It has been a pleasure and an honor to be with you here today. This has been Tango Hotel with Memory Tango. Thank you for watching, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace out.